So good evening and welcome to New York University, to the information session tonight for the Department of Applied Psychology's programs in Counseling for Mental Health and Wellness and School Counseling. Our school counseling program also encompasses our bilingual school counseling program. By a show of hands, how many of you are here for mental health and wellness? Okay. And school counseling? And do we have any bilingual school counseling people? No? Okay, great. Okay. Our programs in counseling and our department are housed in the Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development. And if not it is the largest, am I correct? The largest of the schools here at New York University, and we are also a fairly large program. So let me introduce myself to you first. I am Corinne Weinman, and I am the Director of Training and Internship for the two counseling programs, and it's my pleasure to sort of run this information session for you. I promise you at the end of the evening, in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, I think that between myself and Dr. Randy Mowry, who's a member of our counseling faculty, and Tom Kleinert, who's Associate Director of Graduate Admissions, we will pretty much have the opportunity to answer all of your questions and give you a very nice and brief overview of both programs, and hopefully you will come away knowing more about us, knowing more about the two programs, and better able to make a decision about your goals and your application to us. So I'm going to begin the evening by inviting Tom Kleinert from Graduate Admissions to come up. He's going to talk to you a little bit about the admissions process itself, sort of the nitty-gritty of how you get in touch with us and how you apply for the program, and he'll talk about the application and what goes into it. Before I start talking to you about the actual programs, I think it's very important that you get a feel for our faculty. Now, they can't all be here tonight. Unfortunately, it would be very nice if they could, but most of them are off teaching, which is what they're here to do. And we'd like you to know about our faculty, give you some understanding and some insight into their research endeavors, because it is the faculty that really makes the program what it is. And I want to assure you of that. And so I have Dr. Randy Mowry, who is with us this evening, who is a member of the program faculty. And Dr. Mowry is going to give you a little bit of an overview and some insight into our faculty and their areas of research interest.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. The wind and the chill and the rain and the threat of swine flu, and you're still here. I'm impressed. I'm Randy Mowry. I'm one of the faculty in the counseling program in the Department of Applied Psychology, and I'm here to give you the overview. The Department of Applied Psychology, that actually tells you a lot about the way our program works. Applied means out in the field, essentially. A lot of the research that goes on in the department is out in communities. It's not in a lab inside, running rats or having little babies crawl across visual cliffs or any of that kind of stuff. It's out with real people when those people are doing real things. And the department consists of undergraduate program. We just started a four-year undergraduate degree in applied psychology, which has a component that includes field work. So students are out in the field, in agencies or other community settings doing things, or they're working on research teams with faculty in the department. The master's program, which is why you're here, of course, includes the school and mental health counseling programs. We also have an educational psych program that's being transformed into a more community-oriented human development and social intervention master's degree program. And then we have doctoral programs in counseling psychology, as well as psychological development and a doctoral program in psychology and social intervention. Now, I tell you this because even though you come in with a particular focus, such as mental health counseling or school counseling, you're going to be interacting with students across the degree levels. If you get involved in a research team in particular, you're going to be working with undergraduate students, other master's students, and doctoral students, as well as the faculty. And so that's an enriching experience because you're one step above the undergraduates, so they're learning from you. The doctoral students, you're learning from them. And so it's a very dynamic kind of a relationship and beneficial to your education. The programs in counseling are, as I said, embedded in the department, this applied psych department. And I would have, if you want to characterize the department, you would have to think of two words: multiculturalism and communities. If you look at the research of the faculty across the entire department, and we have approximately 30 or 31 faculty members, you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who isn't doing something that is related to the diversity that exists in the population, religiously, culturally, linguistically, and so forth. Our faculty in the department do research not only here in the States, but we have research settings in South Africa, in Paris, in Peru. That reflects the diversity of the faculty and the diversity of the interests. So we do, the department as a whole does work in the area of like poverty and its effects on academic and psychological development. We do a lot of work that has impact on public policy, so how research informs public policy so that politicians can do right. Yeah, I said that. Immigration is a big issue in our department and its effects on social, academic, and psychological development. We have our developmental faculty do research on the role of fathers in development. It's just not mothers. Work in trauma, school readiness, and so forth. So there's a lot going on in the department. And counseling students, as well as the counseling psych doctoral students, they work on research teams across the department, not just with counseling faculty, because the work of the department as a whole can inform what a counselor does. Understanding immigration in New York City is an important thing. Understanding language development and second language learners is an important thing when you're living in New York City, where there are, 80-some languages of instruction in the public school system. So you can see the work being integrated into what you learn. Now, in terms of the counseling program faculty, again, if I had to characterize our faculty and the focus that exists in the program, you would have to say multiculturalism. The faculty is diverse, and the faculty's research interests as it relates to broad issues related to counseling are also diverse. And I'm just going to sort of run down and tick off the faculty names that are associated with the counseling program, and just a little statement about their research interests. I encourage you to go to the Department of Applied Psychology website and look at the faculty within the program and read their little bios that are on there. Some of them, I believe, have their Vitas posted too, so you can see their CV, which shows everything they've presented and written about in the last, however many years. But I also encourage you to look at the faculty across the whole department because again, we are not a bunch of isolated faculty members. Faculty members are working with each other and collaborating with each other across the program lines within the department. Currently our director of the counseling programs is Dr. Alicia Alley. She does a lot of work in the area of women's mental health, in particular depression, but relating it to issues of poverty and economic empowerment. Has a lot of research going on in different community settings where women who are disadvantaged from various backgrounds are receiving services from a particular agency, but also receiving services related to financial literacy, economic empowerment, micro-lending, and then looking at how that kind of, if you will, non-psychological intervention is impacting mental health. The chair of the department is also a member of our counseling faculty. That's Dr. Jacqueline Mattis. Her area of research focuses on religiosity and spirituality, positive psychology, so the idea of why do we always look at the pathology side of things, why don't we look at strengths and work from strengths, and then maybe some of the pathology will resolve, as well as issues of civic engagement within African American populations. The department's vice chair is also a counseling faculty member. So you see our program is very well represented in the power structure of the department. Our vice chair is Dr. Arnold Grossman. His area of focus is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, and questioning individuals. In particular, he's sort of worked on the two ends of the age range. He's very much focused on LGBT youth, around victimization, abuse, and its impacts, in particular on transgender youth too, which is a group of the LGBT population that has received very little research, and he's done quite a bit in that area. But he has also worked on elderly LGBT people. He's done work in that area. So he's sort of got the lifespan there. Another faculty member is Dr. Mary McCrae, who is very much interested in intra-group dynamics and looking at the roles of gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and other social identity markers as it plays itself out in how groups function. And of course, lots of counseling is done through group settings, so this kind of information is very important. And she has run a program that has looked at intra-group dynamics over the years, and has actually works within a model that she has received a lot of recognition for and recently published a book on it. Dr. Lisa Suzuki is very much focused on multicultural assessment issues. So when you're, and particularly in relation to school counseling. So if you're assessing achievement in a diverse population of school kids, if you're assessing intelligence, what are the multicultural factors there? And has edited and written in that area. I think she's editor of the Handbook of Multicultural Assessment. Dr. Sumi Okazaki is a recent addition to our counseling faculty, who looks a lot at immigration and acculturation issues as it relates to mental health, and she particularly focuses on Asian American populations. Dr. Sam Juni is an interesting character in our program, and he's one of our people who are very strong in psychoanalysis, object relations as a theoretical orientation, but he also does a lot of work in assessment and psychometrics, measuring behavior, social behavior of various sorts, projective testing, and so forth. Dr. Mary Sue Richardson, her focus has been a lot on vocational and career development issues, and she's very actively involved in how traditional career development theory is being changed in light of the way people live their career lives. Probably quite a number of you, some percentage of you in here, weren't really 10 years ago thinking about being a mental health or a school counselor, and yet now you're here. And of course, if you even keep up with the news, people change careers a whole hell of a lot more than what they used to back when my dad was working. You get one job and you stick with it. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. And so career development theory is undergoing changes, and she's very much involved in that. And then last but not least is myself. My area of interest is broadly disability. My background comes out of rehabilitation counseling. My specific interest is in the area of deafness, and even more specifically, culturally deaf people who use American Sign Language as their primary language. And so I'm very much interested in the intersection of multiculturalism and disability, issues around how that language is used in counseling settings. American Sign Language is a very different language from English. It works very differently as a language, and so how does that impact the counseling process, and so forth. I'm also working in the areas of domestic violence as it applies to women with disabilities, and doing some research with Dr. Alley related to that. Now, if you're probably kind of wondering, well, okay, the counseling program, all this research is going on. What is the kind of theoretical orientation or approach that the counseling faculty have? Does the program have a particular orientation towards psychodynamic kinds of training, or is it more CBT, cognitive behavior therapy kind of training? And it's hard to characterize us in that way. Broadly, I would say you could put us into the two kind of broad camps of psychodynamic and more cognitive behavioral. With the exception of a couple of us, most of us would probably consider ourselves to be rather eclectic. We're rooted in a particular tradition, but don't ignore the other traditions of providing counseling services. Several faculty maintain active private practices. Other faculty are more involved in either consultation roles in agencies or in research. So we have a balance in that area. And so to sort of wrap up, I would characterize, sometimes you might hear someone who's a therapist or a counselor say, good counseling is just good counseling. And that's kind of not necessarily a true thing, because what has been considered for years good counseling came out of a Western, mainstream American tradition, basically on middle-class white folks. And so that's not a really good thing. Now you have to think of good counseling is culturally sensitive and culturally embedded counseling. And I think the faculty in our program represent that. So if you have any quick questions on the faculty or and what we do, I'll be happy to take those. Good.
You've gotten a good overview, I think, about our counseling faculty, who we are, the general department. So this is my opportunity to tell you some about the programs that you're actually interested in and that you are thinking about applying to. I'm going to begin with the school counseling program because I think that's a little bit easier for me to cover more quickly. Our school counseling program consists of 48 credits, and it is a program that has been registered in New York State for 48 credits, and so it is fully accepted and will provide you with a provisional certification in New York State. The program meets requirements for most other states, and although there's no absolute reciprocal arrangement for any certifications or licenses, our students who have completed our program are able to apply for certification in other states and are successful. I work very closely with students who are interested in applications to other states for certification because some states do have slight differences. For example, California requires 600 hours of internship for school counselors, and we make sure that you get your requirements met if you come into our program. So although it's 48 in New York, and we set the amount of internship as 2 full days a week or 400 hours, we're very astute to all of the other state requirements. School guidance counselors, from our perspective, are the people who really collaborate with all members of a school's environment. So they are working with students, with teachers, as well as with the community and with parents. So it's a very important role that they serve if you're not very familiar with that role. It means that you need to understand how to develop and execute programs, how to bring about and create opportunities for students to grow as well as they possibly can academically, socially, emotionally, and within the community. So they interface with all of those various folks in the community. In some instances, and depending on the grade level, they are doing more group counseling work. They will be doing more work in terms of working with their teachers and classrooms in order to develop opportunities for students to deal with some issues that are of concern depending on various grade levels. We do not see, the school counselor is not a mental health psychotherapist in a school environment. They are not in that role. Their role is to collaborate with all the people I mentioned earlier and to help students to achieve their best functioning academically. As I mentioned, our program prepares you to work with students K through 12 so that you can work with elementary, middle, and high school, although most school counselors are hired in middle and high school settings. Many school counselors also are involved in career work as well as in assisting students in moving into transitional programs. They may be transitioning sort of typically from high school into college settings, but also in dealing with, and we want to think that we prepare people to work with students who are also transitioning into vocational settings, perhaps community colleges, perhaps vocational institutions, and then also working with students who have particular needs, whether it's educational or physical disabilities, so that they too make a healthy transition from high school into the greater world. So school counseling is an important program. We think very highly of our school counselors. They do an internship in a variety of settings, in school settings. The internship is, as I said, a requirement is 400 hours, although I can tell you that most of our students complete 600 hours of internship now, which answers some of your questions about full-time and part-time. So I'm just going to segue into that. The important issue in terms of whether you are taking a full-time course load each semester or a part-time one is one of involvement within the overall department, but also to preparation for a very big load when you are in your final year in terms of your internship. Okay. Interns work in, generally our school counseling interns are mostly in our schools in New York City in the Department of Education, although we do have folks in private schools as well. Most private schools don't generally hire full-time certified school counselors, and you must be supervised by a full-time certified school counselor. Our bilingual school counselors must be supervised by a bilingual school counselor. Okay. Students engage in all activities in counseling when they are interns, And as I said earlier, upon graduation, you are recommended for certification in New York State, and then you can apply independently for certification in other states if you're going to go outside of New York. Salaries are really good, as you know. However, in New York City right now, there's a freeze on hiring, but the freeze will thaw. I know it because it always does. And people will leave the system by attrition, retirement, move, and for other factors. So there will be a need again, and a greater need for school counselors. That should give you a pretty good overview of the school counseling program. Can I take a few questions about school counseling specifically, and then I'm going to talk about mental health counseling. Yes, ma'am.
For the internship, if you're from Long Island, can you do the internship on Long Island?
Yeah, Long Island, when last I looked, was part of New York City. So yes, you can do your internship on Long Island, in Westchester. I even have students doing internships in New Jersey. We are open to letting you complete an internship as long as the person who is supervising you is certified as a school counselor in that state. So yeah, Long Island, Westchester, absolutely. Yes?
Do you have a list of school places?
I have more than a list. You have me. I'm the director of internship. I start working with students my meetings are scheduled starting next week. In late November and early December, I meet with students in small groups. And by January, we start working on helping you secure placement. Okay, so we help you secure your placement site. I maintain a database of schools where we have had relationships over these many years. New York City is a phenomenal resource for internships and for schools. We're in the heart of New York. There's no place better. So yes, you get a lot of assistance in securing your site.
Well, I was asking about the outside psychology program, and as a part of our fieldwork, I was not allowed to do anything on Long Island because it wasn't affiliated with the department. That's why I was asking.
No,
Thank you.
not here. Yes?
Can you tell me what scholarships are available for students interested in school counseling?
The only scholarship outside of the ones that Tom mentioned through the financial aid office, there is a Department of Education scholarship for bilingual school counselors only. And I will tell you, generally Spanish-speaking bilingual school counselors. That scholarship is offered through the Department of Education. You would need to apply for it in the spring through the DOE. The application is on the DOE website at teachnyc.org, and they will bring you in for an interview. And if in fact you are offered a scholarship and you're accepted to NYU, you can bring that scholarship to New York University. Right now, they don't give that many, but when they do, they're wonderful. It's an entirely covered tuition scholarship. That scholarship, we now have 2 scholarship candidates who are in the school counseling program right now, in the bilingual school counseling. There are other languages acceptable. Some of the Asian languages, Mandarin and Cantonese, generally Cantonese. Occasionally, they've had scholarships for Russian-speaking school counselors and a couple of other languages, but predominantly it's Spanish. Yes?
I know this program specializes in K through 12, but can you come out of this program with proper training to also work in higher education as a counselor?
We don't focus on higher ed counseling particularly, although I have had students who have come out of the school counseling program, did their internships in high school settings, and were able to secure positions in community colleges, and particularly some of those special programs that work with disadvantaged students in high schools to transfer them into college settings. But no, we're not focusing your work on higher ed. Yes?
When you graduate with a provisional certification, do you have to take, is it just that you need to work in a high school for a certain?
Any school. You need to work for 2 years after provisional, and you need to obtain an additional 12 credits. We're more than welcome you to take the additional 12 here. You can take them elsewhere over the course of 5 years, and then you are eligible for permanent certification. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
When you do your internship, do you have to do all of the minimum 400 hours in the same school?
Yeah. We prefer that you do 2 days a week in one school. That would be the 400 hours. And if you're going to do 600, we invite you to do 1 day a week in another grade level. If you're in California, then you must do, and in some of the other states. So I encourage students to basically do 2 days a week over the course of a full year in one setting, meaning middle or higher elementary, and then 1 day a week in an alternative, in another age range. Yeah. Questions? Yes?
If you already work in the school, would you be able to do your internship through the school that you're already in, or is it?
It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. If you're working in the school as a teacher, then you're working 9 to 3 or 8 to 3, and there's no time to do counseling as well.
If you've already established, like, you have just a relationship with the past.
It really is not in your best interest to do your internship in the same school where you're currently employed. It just makes it very, very difficult. And that internship is your opportunity to put all of that learning into the real world. So you want to get the experience in another kind of setting, perhaps an urban setting, perhaps a different kind of population. You want to really test yourself and challenge yourself in your internship. That's really the goal of it. I'm going to move on to mental health and then take some questions later if you still have some. Okay, many of you are here tonight to get some information about the mental health counseling program. I'm excited to tell you about it. I am a licensed mental health counselor in New York State. I'm number 347. So that tells you that I got in early. I got in early because I was part of the grandfathering. And I was also involved because I was the past president of the New York Mental Health Counseling Association, involved in the actual licensure for mental health counseling. So I'm very happy to tell you more about that program. The mental health counseling program is a 60-credit master's program. We are registered and approved by New York State. We have been licensure qualified since 2005 when the license came into effect. So we're very delighted with that fact. The program is generally based in theoretical knowledge, experiential learning, and counseling internship and practicum. It's in conjunction with a comprehensive body of coursework. Much of the coursework is determined by the state so that we meet their requirements. The core content of the coursework includes human growth and development, psychopathology, counseling theory and practice, group counseling, professional foundations and ethics, career development, assessment and appraisal, research, and clinical training. We use a clinical training model that we're very proud of. Our students spend a full year in clinical training. In your first year, you'll be participating in what we call lab. Our labs are really that. They are very small groups, generally about 8 students in a group. You are working with an instructor and the 8 students in developing your basic counseling skills in the first semester, which of course include the basic listening sequence. You become attuned to how to listen and how to sit with a client and work with them. We pair you with a peer in your class, and you actually work with that student in our labs. There's little rooms where you're being taped, and your instructor and your classmates are watching the tapes, and you are getting constant feedback, and so you're developing your own skills. It's really a wonderful way to train people to be counselors. In the second semester, we use a similar training model. However, we now expand your work so that the sessions are longer. You're working with one peer client over a longer period of time. And we try to engage you now in also looking, as Randy pointed out, the multicultural influences of counseling, so that you're applying multicultural concepts to how you will conduct a session. We feel strongly that by the end of that year sequence, you have the basic skills, and so that's your prerequisite, one of the prerequisites to going out into your internship. The internship is 600 hours, which is required by New York State. You will be in a setting that you will choose along with me. Again, as I said, I work with students. We make every effort. I work very hard to help you develop a setting. If you have a very specific area of interest, we'll try to do our best to meet that. If not, we, again, have a database, and we have relationships with many sites and agencies where our students have gained their training in the past, so that we know we can place you in an environment where you're going to grow and develop as a counselor. And that's really the function of the internship. It's not going to make you a specialist in eating disorders or a specialist in substance abuse counseling. Rather, you're a generalist. You've learned the basics. You're now using your skills to further enhance your knowledge and training as a counselor. So the setting is important, but it's your personal development, your development of your skills, your self-awareness, your use of supervision. It's a very important aspect of your internship experience, and we rely on our site supervisors to help in the training model. Mental health counselors work in a wide range of settings. We are in New York, kind of a relatively new licensed professional, although in other states, folks have been licensed as professional counselors or licensed mental health counselors for well over 25 years. The licensing now, I used to tell everybody, well, every state but. However, it was every state but California. California has now, it will now be licensing professional counselors, mental health counselors. They just signed their licensure bill about 2 months ago. So by January of 2011, they will have prepared their regulations, and people will be in a position to apply for licenses in California. So I'm delighted to say at that point, all 50 states will license counselors. Licensed professional counselors are an important part of the mental health professional network and do great work in many, many settings. I want to tell you a little bit about some of our internship settings. Usually that's a question people want to know. So just let me give you a brief overview of some of the internship sites. Folks do work in colleges, in the college counseling centers. We have folks in places like Fordham, Baruch, St. Francis, Pratt, Pace, Hunter, John Jay, Marymount, Brooklyn College, LIM, and St. Joseph's. That's just this year. We have several students who actually seek our program out because they're interested in LGBT studies. As Randy mentioned to you, Dr. Grossman is quite well known in that area. So we have folks doing internships at the Hetrick Martin Institute, the Counseling Center. We have people in Institute for Human Identity, and a number of other programs that actually work closely with the LGBT community. Addiction treatment settings, clearly we have people in many of the different major addiction treatment programs, including Phoenix House, Veritas. We've had people in Hamilton Madison, which has an Asian-specific treatment program. Samaritan Village, Women in Need, as well as a number of others. We've had people in hospital settings, in various facets of hospital settings. St. Luke's program for rape crisis intervention. Bellevue in their program in smoking cessation. These are working with people who were victims of 9/11. This is part of their 9/11 program, and have continued to have health and medical problems. South Beach Psychiatric Center, Mount Sinai Rehab, among others. We've had people in community agencies serving homeless at Covenant House, St. Paul's Center, at shelter programs. We have people at disability-specific programs at the MS Society, as well as in ICD in their brain trauma program. We're working very hard to get students into the VA system. It's a tough system to break into, although the VA system has accepted mental health counselors as qualified providers. They really haven't sort of come on board, but we're working on it. We have a number of students who are interested in working in psychotherapy training institutes and improving their skills in that area. We have folks at Karen Hornight Clinic, the Institute for Contemporary Psychotherapy, New York Counseling Center, the Psychotherapy Study Center. People who have been interested in working with correctional populations. We are at Lincoln Correctional Facility and Rikers Island. And to answer the question, you don't have to be only in New York. You can be outside of New York. We have people in placements in New Jersey, and actually one person right now in Pennsylvania. So it is possible to do an internship there. You are not told where to go. We work together in your development and in creating an internship that will work well for you. Let's see, I guess that's kind of the overview. I'm going to talk a minute about licensure, just so that you know the process. Licensure in New York State requires that you complete a master's program such as ours. That is a 60-credit program that is qualified and registered with New York State. That meets your educational requirement. Then you also need to complete 3,000 hours of post-master's supervised, approved experience, approved by the state. That's after you graduate, 3,000 hours in the field, hopefully working, earning a living, and also being supervised. Once you have accrued your 3,000 hours, then you also, during that period of time, at any point, may sit for the National Clinical Mental Health Counseling Exam, which is the exam for New York State. That is their licensing exam. Once you have completed all of that, you are fully licensed. Once fully licensed, you may open a private practice. If you so choose, you may see patients privately. You can use the term mental health counselor or psychotherapist. It's a protected title now in New York State. Those terms, those titles can only be used by folks who have a license in either mental health counseling or licensed clinical social workers or licensed psychologists. So those titles are now protected. Once you graduate, if you are working in the field, you must have a limited permit. Your limited permit allows you to work as a mental health counselor, psychotherapist, while continuing to be under supervision. Okay? I think I've kind of covered the basics, so let me ask for some questions. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask you, what is the difference between, and who would gravitate, what type of people gravitate towards becoming a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed certified social worker?
Okay, licensed clinical social worker. Yeah. I think that I like to look at who we are. We're grounded in psychology. So our work comes out of a knowledge base of psychology. We tend to focus more on individuals than on the larger community, and in looking at how problems or one's individual issues sort of interface with community. We tend to be more focused on the individual, although we are also able to practice with groups, families, as well as adults. I think that while there are many overlaps, it's just the underlying principles of social work come out of a different foundation. I think that that's a much older field. I mean, it's been around a really long time, and there are lots of social workers out there, particularly in New York City, which is very much sort of social work fertile. And folks are now becoming more aware of the role of mental health counselors as dealing with people's issues and problems across the lifespan, more in terms of wellness and health than in pathology, that people will need and want to seek out work and help during many different points in their lives when they are dealing with difficult issues and problems. So we tend to think, particularly in our program, in terms of health and wellness as opposed to illness and pathology.
And how does this program compare to other programs that lead to licensure in the New York area, like Columbia and Hunter?
Okay. Well,
This is your time to shine.
what I'll tell you is we are NYU. And our program is, our faculty is the core of our program. Their areas of interest. We invite students, we encourage students to participate in research. We make that very much available to them if you want to avail yourselves of it. We certainly allow our students and give them a lot of assistance and latitude in terms of where they're going to do internships and encourage them to seek that out. We offer, in addition to the core content courses, we have a terrific range of elective courses, and your program allows for several applied content or elective courses. And we have numbers of people who are actively engaged in those areas, whether it's trauma and taking coursework in that, counseling for grief and bereavement. We have folks who are specialists in that area. So I think we bring together a wonderful group of full-time faculty as well as adjunct faculty. Our adjunct faculty are really superb, and they have been people who have worked with us continually. Our NYU supervisors, when you're in the field, you're also registered for a course. That's a small group course, 6 to 1. And those people are all clinicians practicing either privately or in agencies. If they're school counselors, they've been school counselors for 25 years. They really understand the system. I think they really bring that kind of enthusiasm for their work to their students.
Can I ask one other question to that point?
Okay.
In terms of percentages of the wonderful faculty that you have, how much of their classes are they actually teaching versus handing off to adjunct professors because they're too busy to deal with this?
All of our faculty are teaching, and they're teaching required coursework. Sam Juni, we didn't even mention, because my colleague and dear friend Jennifer Goodwin is not here tonight. She's ill and she couldn't speak. She has laryngitis, so I'm taking over for her. Didn't mention one of the areas that she generally talks about, and that's our study abroad work. We have faculty that are going abroad. You can do coursework, required coursework abroad. We offer coursework during the winter session in London. We offer coursework during summer in Israel. So there are opportunities to take courses in other places besides NYU. I just want you to know that. And we allow our people to also take coursework within the university in other programs and in other departments if you saw something that really interested you. Within Steinhardt, we have the departments of drama therapy, music therapy, and art therapy, and some of our students do take coursework in those areas. But our faculty teach, and they teach required courses. It may happen that you may find yourself in a section being taught by an adjunct faculty. In general, if they are adjunct faculty, they are people who have been teaching those courses regularly and are quite competent to do that. Yes, sir.
How do you help these students get a job after they graduate? And also, can you provide a list of alumni where they've been placed or they have a job? I know Columbia Teachers College, they have it online, so we can maybe see where the alumni have been placed.
Okay, we don't place people after you graduate. I think that if they may have placements of internships, but they really, wouldn't imagine that they are telling you necessarily where people are currently employed. I can only tell you that anecdotally. People are employed in a wide range of settings. We have the Wasserman Center, which is our center for that assists students with employment. They run workshops on resume preparation, interviewing skills. They do job fairs on a regular basis. They work with you in terms of what search engines to use for various areas. We can't place you, that's not our role. What we try to do is train you very, very well so that when you go out there, you shine, you excel, you can, in fact, let employers know the kinds of skills and abilities that you possess. New York City is a difficult employment market right now. I'm not going to lie to you. And that is tough. The state also has had a number of requirements about where you can fulfill the 3,000 hours, your entry-level hours. Right now, we're working, and the professional organizations have been working very hard with the state, and they're in the process of revising some of those regulations to expand opportunities so that new graduates can fulfill those 3,000 hours. That's been somewhat of a problem. I wouldn't deny to you that it's a competitive place. We're competing with other mental health professionals, generally social workers. And as I said to you, there are now about 4,000 licensed mental health counselors and about 60,000 social workers. So the odds are tough right now in New York. Once outside of New York City, the picture changes considerably. Yes?
I know you also offer a PhD program in counseling. So is that something that normally people who graduate from your master's program move on to? And if so, do they accept any of the master's credits towards their program, or is it completely different?
The psychology doctoral program in counseling psych accepts about 4 students a year. So it's a very small program. It is very much a research-based applicant. They're looking for people who have done a lot of work in research. They will certainly entertain applications from our students, but that's not necessarily a pathway into that program. One of the things I want you to keep in mind about a master's program in mental health counseling is that for most people, it is a terminal degree, meaning that you will be licensed. Generally speaking, you will be able to do what it is you're hoping to do out there in the future in terms of working with individuals, working with families, working with groups. If your goals are with regard to continuing for a doctorate because you want to continue to do research or do teaching, certainly a doctorate is going to be required, and you would want to explore many different programs, not just this one. And it is not a pathway. One is not a pathway to the other. Yes?
There's a debate out there between, in terms of the pay of social workers and mental health. What is there a huge difference, or institutions look more for social workers because they're cheaper, or?
You're asking about pay differentials. In truth, it's not that they're cheaper or we're cheaper. I think what's happened is the larger constructs, which is really Medicare reimbursement as well as private insurance reimbursement. This is where we are engaged in lots of strong activity on a political level. These are political issues. They have nothing to do with who's well trained and who's prepared. The past number of years, people are out there working, and many of our students are now fully licensed. I hear about our graduates all the time who have now achieved their 3,000 hours and have gotten licensed. This has been probably the most difficult year of all. It has been tough for people to get positions that are accepted by the state. Now, people will get jobs. For example, they may get a job in a college setting in a career counseling center where they may be doing counseling, but the career counseling center is not considered a mental health center by New York State, and so they can't accrue hours there. Those are the kinds of problems that they're running up against. May I share with you, if you graduate from a school of social work, you get an MSW. That's the equivalent of 60 credits as our 60 credits. They too have to do 3,000 hours of postmaster's supervised experience before they can get their license as clinical social workers, equal to ours. So there is difficulty in everyone's court now about locating positions that will satisfy accruing those hours. I won't deny that there are certainly more agencies out there familiar with social workers or advertising for social workers than for mental health. But if you look, you'll start to see more and more will say MSW or LCSW or LMHC. We feel very optimistic that we're definitely moving in the right direction. We meet or exceed the requirements in other states. People have had no difficulty in applying for licensure and gaining licensure in other states with this degree, with this program.
And does New York State have reciprocity?
There's no reciprocity in any state. No state immediately takes your license from another. You have to go through an application process. And each state sets their own requirements. So you may see a course, for example, I know that in Florida, they have a requirement for a course in substance abuse and a course in human sexuality. New York State does not have that requirement. Because I work very closely with students, if I know and they know that they're going to seek licensure in another state, we'll make sure that those two courses are two of your elective courses. If you graduate from our program and you want to go to Iowa, you apply for a license in Iowa, and you meet Iowa's requirements. I can tell you,
This degree and those 3,000 hours from there.
you can get the 3,000 hours. Most states it's about 3,000 hours, but you would then meet the requirements of licensure in that state, whatever state that may be. Some of you may be interested, if you've done any coursework, if you've done graduate work in another institution in terms of transfer credit. You may bring up to 30% of transfer credit into the program of courses that we approve. The courses must be taken within the last 10 years, not to be used for another degree. You must have earned a B or better in order to transfer in any credits. For example, you took a course in human growth and development at Hunter College on the graduate level, you got a B, you took the course 2 years ago, that course would be eligible for transfer credit. So it amounts to 18 credits that you can bring in from another program or from other programs for the mental health, or up to 12 credits for school counseling. I mentioned a little bit about study abroad. Advisement, people are often interested in advisement. You will be assigned a faculty advisor who really acts more as your mentor, although they will certainly be involved in helping you to plan your course of study, maybe make recommendations about some of the coursework you might like to take if you have a particular area of interest. In addition, Jennifer Goodwin is our academic advisor and is always available to meet with students to deal with coursework issues, pass-fail, drop-add, and all the other intricacies of academic advisement. And she's quite accessible, really accessible. As I indicated to you earlier, I am the director of internship and work with students in terms of securing their placements and then overseeing all of the internship sections so that we make sure that the internship that you select in your second semester is really the one you want to be in when you're there. In terms of student life, I do want to add a few things. We're a large program, but we try to create an intimate environment in which people really learn and share together and collaborate and bring their own wealth of interests and life experiences. So we have a very active student counseling association. They plan social events, they plan academic events, they have visited Albert Ellis Institute, they've brought in guest speakers, they've conducted sort of roundtables about experiences that people are dealing with that might be difficult in terms of going through the program and maybe balancing child's care and schoolwork and study. So they are really create an environment that allows many folks to come together, and so that the school counseling students as well as the mental health students interact on many, many levels. So we have an active student life association as well. There's one course on cognitive behavioral therapy in particular. That there is also discussion of CBT in the counseling theories course. But no, that would be it. Were you interested in absolutely taking another course, if there were a course that was of a higher level somewhere else, you could take a course at another institution and bring that course in. Keep in mind that the program is a basic program that prepares you as a generalist. In generally speaking, if people want to excel in a particular area, for example, in Gestalt therapy or in CBT, they might then pursue training, postmaster's training at an Albert Ellis Institute or a Gestalt Institute or a Horney Institute. Okay? Anything else? We covered all the questions. We covered all the bases. You heard what you needed to hear. Okay? You're not going to be going home on the subway and saying, damn, I wish I had asked her that. You're an undergrad and you're taking 2 undergraduate level courses in psychology. I think as long as you have as Tom mentioned, a very strong rationale for what's drawing you to this program, why you're interested in this field, why you think it's right for you. Those are the kinds of things we're interested in hearing about. So then, yeah, I would say absolutely okay. I'm going to mention one way that you might do that. You might consider taking a course next semester on a graduate level from either NYU or another institution in psychology. You might take human growth and development, for example. I would usually recommend a development course because it kind of gives you an overview across the lifespan, so that you have an understanding at least of what's entailed. You may include that in your application that you are currently enrolled.
Even though I wouldn't at that point have like a completed
Right,
course or-
even though. I just wanted to address one issue around career change and adults who might be interested in hearing about this. This is many people are career changers in our program, and we have people in the program anywhere from our young students who are just coming out of undergraduate and maybe in their early 20s, all the way to people who are in their late 50s. So that it is not at all unusual for us to have that kind of diversity, not only in all the other areas that were mentioned, but also the diversity in age.
This idea that you don't have a background in psychology, your background is unrelated to counseling. To present yourself now as to coming in, I think I can be a good counselor. Here are the reasons. Take a look at what you do in your job that is, if you will, counselor-like. And then try to couch that in terms of, I do this in my current work, but my current work is not really what I want to do, but this aspect of it I really like, and it has bearing on me being a counselor. But you also have to explain to us why you're making this transition. What is it about what you've done so far that isn't fulfilling you in the way you want, or what happened that has sparked this particular point in time that you need to make this change, and that you think that you are qualified to become a counselor and a good counselor. So you have to put your life in context, and because you say it's unrelated, it probably isn't unrelated. There's probably connections in there. You just have to make those connections for us so we can see that you understand that, basically.
Being a parent is a very dynamic experience in counseling, right? Many of you also, I just want to make mention, in school counseling, may have come from an education background where you're doing teaching. That's great. That's a very important segue into school counseling. We really understand that you are skilled and understand the needs of students in a classroom. So definitely, you tell us about that. I think why you're seeing more programs now is because of the license. And what the state did by licensing the term psychotherapist. Prior to 2005, anyone could hang a shingle and say, I'm a psychotherapist. You didn't need anything. So it has now professionalized that field. And the only vehicle to use that term is either licensed mental health counselor, licensed clinical social worker, or licensed psychologist. So it was the domain initially of psychology. Gradually, social workers entered the domain during the period of Clinton and managed care, because managed care was looking for less expensive and less costly ways to meet people's needs and desire for therapy. And now counselors who have been out there all the time are now professionalized. Because you're going to work with me, and in addition, you're going to interview at a school in order to secure a site, both for mental health and for school counseling. The process involves, we identify some schools that you're interested in. You assure me that, or we're assured that the person that would supervise you would meet our requirements. You're interviewed. If you're offered that internship and they meet our requirements and we sign an agreement, you're good to go. We have plenty of people out on Long Island. I encourage you, go to the website, read about our faculty, read about our program. Make a very informed decision. This is an important decision if you decide and choose to come and train with us. What I will say to you is, if you do decide and come to train with us in either school counseling or mental health, I think you're going to get a great educational experience, and we'll certainly give you our very best. So thank you so much for coming tonight. It was a pleasure working with all of you. Thank you.